The stars shone faintly through the cracks of the asteroid's surface, tiny points of light in the endless black. Deep inside, where sunlight could never reach, the air was thick with dust and the faint smell of minerals. The mine was alive with the sound of labor, the scraping of tools, the clatter of rocks, and the harsh voices of overseers. Here, far from freedom and hope, a young alien girl named Lyria worked tirelessly. She had spent most of her life in these mines, her hands raw from hauling heavy crystal chunks, her body thin and weak from long days with little food. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her bright eyes, which once held curiosity, now mostly held fear. She moved silently among the other workers, her head bowed. She had learned that the smallest mistake could bring harsh punishment. The overseers were unforgiving, watching every movement with sharp eyes. Even the slightest complaint or hesitation could result in a beating or worse. Lyria's life was measured in the weight of rocks and the hours spent in darkness. She remembered a time before the mines, though it was vague, a home filled with sunlight and laughter, a family that loved her. That life seemed like a dream, one that had been taken from her long ago. Despite the fear, Lyria carried a small piece of herself that the mine could not crush. Hidden deep in a corner of the tunnels, where the walls glimmered faintly with crystal veins, she had created a secret place. There, with a shard of mineral as her pencil, she drew the stars she imagined outside, imagining worlds far beyond the endless rock. It was dangerous to pause, to take a breath that did not belong to the mine's schedule, but she did it anyway. She needed reminders of life beyond the chains of her labor. One morning, the mine was filled with an unusual tension. The overseers barked orders more sharply than usual, and whispers ran among the workers. Rumors had spread of a human arriving on the asteroid, a human who might be here to investigate the mines and the treatment of slaves. Lyria didn't dare hope. Humans were powerful, and in the past they had been strangers, dangerous in ways that frightened her. Yet, something about the rumors made her chest tighten, a mix of fear and curiosity she hadn't felt in years. The human arrived that day, stepping into the mine with careful confidence. Captain Alex Mercer had come from Earth, sent to uncover illegal operations hidden in distant asteroid belts. He was tall, with broad shoulders and calm eyes that seemed to notice everything at once. Unlike the overseers, Alex did not shout or demand. He walked slowly, observing the workers, asking quiet questions, and listening. He was not interested in cruelty or control. Instead, he sought to understand, to find the truth beneath the fear and dust. Lyria first saw him from a distance. He moved differently than anyone she had seen, calmly, carefully, almost as if he belonged to the world above the mine rather than its shadowed depths. She stayed in her corner, hoping he would not notice her. Her heart pounded as she watched him interact with the workers. They flinched at his presence at first, unsure of his intentions. But Alex's gentle manner, his refusal to punish or threaten, slowly began to draw attention. For the first time, Lyria wondered if there might be someone who could change her life. Days passed, and Alex returned repeatedly to the same section of the mine. He watched the workers carefully, offering small gestures of kindness, a ration of water, a soft word of encouragement. Lyria's curiosity grew. She had learned not to trust, yet she could not ignore the human's presence. One day, she found herself trembling as she clutched a small bag of minerals, hiding in the shadows while he inspected the mine. When Alex noticed her, he did not call out or scold her. He simply knelt, keeping his distance, and spoke softly. "You don't have to be afraid," he said. "I'm not here to hurt you." Lyria's eyes widened. The words were strange, foreign. She had spent so long expecting cruelty that kindness was almost impossible to believe. She wanted to run, to hide, but something in Alex's calm tone made her pause. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to imagine a different life, one where she was not just a tool, a slave, but a person with value. Their interactions were cautious at first. Alex did not push. He did not demand trust. He offered small comforts, extra water, a place to rest when the overseers were distracted. Lyria began to speak in whispers, sharing small details of the tunnels, pointing out areas where danger might strike. Each day, her fear lessened slightly. She started to feel a sense of control she had not known in years, and with that control came a fragile sense of hope. The mine itself seemed unaware of the change. The walls were still dark and crushing, the air still heavy with dust. The overseers continued their cruel routines. But Alex's presence was a quiet defiance of their authority. Lyria watched him with growing fascination. He was different from anyone she had met, not only human, but extraordinary in his calm courage, in his refusal to accept injustice. She began to imagine what life could be like if she could escape this place, if someone like him could help her. Then disaster struck. A sudden tremor shook the tunnels, sending rocks tumbling and dust choking the air. The overseers shouted, panic spreading like fire. Lyria froze, her body trembling as the walls cracked and stones fell around her. Alex's voice cut through the chaos, calm but commanding. "This way! Follow me!" He extended a hand toward her. Lyria hesitated, panic warring with the tiny spark of trust she had developed. Finally, she grabbed his hand, feeling a strange surge of courage. Together, they navigated the collapsing mine, Alex guiding her and the others through narrow passages and unstable tunnels. Lyria's heart raced, but she found herself relying on him, trusting his judgment in a way she had not trusted anyone for years. Hours passed in the darkness, their progress slow and dangerous. Lyria saw other workers struggling, some injured, some too scared to move. She acted instinctively, recalling secret pathways she had memorized, helping them navigate to safety. The fear that had once paralyzed her was replaced, bit by bit, with a growing sense of purpose. For the first time in her life, she realized she was more than a victim. She had skills, knowledge, and strength, even if she had forgotten it. Finally, they reached a small chamber, partially shielded from the falling debris. The air was thick, heavy with dust, but for the moment, they were safe. Lyria sank to the ground, exhausted, her hands covered in cuts and bruises. Alex sat beside her, checking the others, speaking softly to reassure them. "You did well," he said, looking at her. "You helped others. You were brave." Lyria could hardly believe the words. Brave was not something she had ever thought of herself. Tears pricked her eyes, a mixture of relief, fear, and a small, growing pride. For the first time, she felt seen, not as a tool, not as a slave, but as a person. As the night stretched on, Lyria allowed herself to speak. She told Alex fragments of her past, careful to protect herself, but enough to reveal the depth of her suffering. Alex listened without judgment, offering comfort not through grand gestures, but through his presence, his patience, and his understanding. By the time the tremors subsided, a bond had formed between them. Lyria no longer saw Alex as just a human outsider. He was a lifeline, a symbol that change was possible. For the first time in years, she dared to imagine a future, however uncertain. The collapse of the mine had left them trapped, yes, but it had also opened a door to possibility. Lyria realized that survival alone was no longer enough. She wanted freedom. She wanted hope. And she now understood that someone had come to help her achieve it. The darkness of the mine still surrounded them, but in Alex's presence, she could see a faint light, flickering but real, hinting at the world beyond the rocks. And for the first time, Lyria believed that she might one day walk under the stars she had drawn in secret, free from fear, free from chains, and finally, in control of her own destiny. The faint light in the chamber seemed almost alive, flickering across the walls of crystal dust. Lyria sat close to Alex, exhausted but alert, her body bruised and her mind still shaken. Around them, the other workers whispered quietly, their faces etched with fear and relief. The tremors had stopped, but the mine was still unstable. Every sound of shifting rock made Lyria flinch, yet a small, stubborn spark of hope burned inside her. She had survived. She had helped others survive, and for the first time in her life, she felt that survival could mean something more. Alex stood slowly, brushing dust from his clothes. His calm presence was steady, reassuring. "We need to find a way out," he said. "The passage we came through is blocked, but there has to be another path." Lyria hesitated. The mine was a maze she knew better than anyone, but she had always hidden in shadows, not led others. The idea of guiding them now in a disaster made her stomach twist. Still, Alex's confidence was contagious. He looked at her expectantly, not demanding, just trusting. And somehow that trust gave her courage. "I know another way," she whispered. "It's narrow, but it might lead to the surface." Alex nodded. "Then show me." Together, they moved through the dark tunnels, Lyria leading cautiously, her knowledge of the mine's secret passages proving invaluable. She pointed out loose stones, weak ceilings, and hidden shafts, avoiding dangers that could have trapped them forever. With every step, her confidence grew, and a strange pride blossomed inside her. For the first time, she felt useful, not as a slave, not as a tool, but as someone whose choices mattered. The journey was long and treacherous. Rocks shifted beneath their feet, dust stung their eyes, and the air grew thinner as they climbed toward the surface. Some of the workers faltered, fear threatening to stop them entirely. Lyria remembered her own terror when she had first entered the mines as a child. She spoke softly, encouraging them, reminding them of what Alex had taught her. Courage was not the absence of fear, but action despite it. Slowly, they pressed onward, step by step, guided by the young alien girl who had once thought herself powerless. As they neared the surface, the walls of the mine began to thin. Lyria caught glimpses of light shining faintly through cracks, the first sunlight she had seen in years. Her heart ached with longing and wonder. The world outside was bright and vast, filled with colors she had almost forgotten. Alex noticed her reaction and smiled, not with words, but with a look that said, "It's okay. You've made it." Finally, they emerged into a small opening on the asteroid's surface. The sky stretched endlessly above them, black and dotted with stars, and the light of distant planets reflected across the rocky terrain. Lyria stumbled, overwhelmed by the sudden freedom. She felt the wind on her skin, the warmth of sunlight, and the wide-open space that had been denied her for so long. It was more than relief. It was joy, pure and simple. Alex stayed close, but he let her take in the moment. "Breathe," he said gently. "You're free now." Lyria nodded, tears spilling from her eyes. She had been free in her mind before, imagining stars and worlds she might never touch, but this freedom was real. She could move, think, and live without fear. She could choose her own path. The rescue team arrived shortly after, bringing supplies, medical aid, and transport for the workers. Lyria was taken to a safe haven, a colony designed for freed slaves and survivors. It was a place filled with aliens from different worlds, each with their own story of hardship and survival. For the first time, Lyria did not feel alone. She saw others who understood her pain, who shared her trauma, and she realized that community could heal what fear and isolation had broken. Alex remained at the colony for a while, helping the newcomers adjust. He spent time with Lyria, teaching her simple skills that went beyond survival. He showed her how to read maps, understand basic engineering, and use tools she had never held before. But more importantly, he taught her to trust herself. "You have strength," he said one day, as they worked together on a small generator. "Not just the kind that keeps you alive, but the kind that changes the world." Lyria listened, hesitant at first, but slowly she believed him. She began to see herself as more than a survivor. She was capable, resourceful, and intelligent. Her trauma, while still a part of her, no longer defined her. Over time, Lyria started to explore the colony, helping others in ways she had never imagined. She shared her knowledge of the mines, teaching safer ways to extract crystal, helping design tools that made labor easier and less dangerous. She became a leader in her own quiet way, earning the respect of both humans and aliens. People looked to her not as the broken child who had been trapped in the mines, but as someone strong and reliable. Her confidence grew with every small victory. She learned to laugh again, to take pleasure in simple joys, walking under the sun, tasting fresh food, listening to music from distant worlds. Each day was a step further from the fear that had controlled her for so long. And through it all, Alex remained a constant presence, not as a protector in the old sense, but as a friend and mentor who believed in her potential, even when she doubted it herself. One evening, Lyria stood on a balcony of the colony, gazing at the stars she had once drawn in secret. The memory of the dark mine was still there, sharp in her mind, but it no longer held power over her. She had survived. She had helped others survive. She had grown stronger, braver, and more capable than she had ever thought possible. Alex joined her quietly, standing beside her. "You've come a long way," he said softly. "You've earned this." Lyria smiled, a true smile that reached her eyes. "I never thought I could," she admitted, "but you showed me it was possible." He shook his head gently. "You did it yourself. I only helped you see it." In the weeks that followed, Lyria took on more responsibilities within the colony. She organized safety drills, taught young aliens how to navigate difficult terrain, and worked with engineers to improve mining techniques in a way that no longer endangered lives. Her past had given her unique insight, and she used it to protect others. People began to look to her for guidance, for inspiration, for leadership. The most profound change was within herself. Lyria no longer flinched at sudden movements or cowered in the presence of authority. She no longer doubted her own worth or abilities. She had discovered her own voice and her own power. And while the memory of the mines would never completely fade, it no longer had the ability to define her. One day, the colony's council invited her to speak before representatives from across the galaxy. She stood in front of a vast assembly, her hands steady, her voice clear. She spoke of the horrors she had endured, of the years spent in fear and labor, but also of hope, resilience, and the courage that could be found even in the darkest places. She told them that humans and aliens could work together, not just to survive, but to build a better future. Alex watched from the sidelines, pride swelling in his chest. He had seen her first flicker of trust, her first act of courage in the collapsing mine, and now he saw her transformed into a confident, capable young leader. Lyria had not only survived, she had thrived. As the assembly applauded, Lyria looked up at the stars. She remembered the tiny sketches she had made in the mine, the secret drawings of light and hope. Now, she could live under those stars, free to explore, learn, and grow. She could shape her own life, and she could help others do the same. In that moment, Lyria realized something profound. Freedom was not just the absence of chains, it was the presence of hope, courage, and the belief in oneself. She had been given a chance by a human who saw her as more than a slave, but it was her own strength, her own will, that had carried her forward. And she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready. The colony thrived, a safe haven where humans and aliens worked together, learning from each other and building a community rooted in trust and cooperation. Lyria became a symbol of what was possible, a reminder that even in the darkest places, courage and hope could flourish. And though the past could not be erased, it became a foundation for her growth, a story she could share to inspire others. Lyria had changed, the human had helped, but the world was hers to explore now. And as she walked under the endless stars, a quiet smile on her face, she understood something she had never believed possible. She was no longer defined by fear. She was free and she was strong, and her life, once trapped in darkness, had finally become her own.